Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Be the Wolf. Today, I want to talk to you about saying no. And if saying no is not the easiest thing for you, you're going to want to listen to this episode because I'm going to go deep into why we have trouble saying no, how to say no in a clean manner so that people actually respect your no. Because if you have trouble saying no, chances are when you do say no, people don't really respect it. And I'm going to give you some tips on how to practice choosing what it is that you truly want. Because if you have trouble saying no, and perhaps you also have trouble saying yes, the bigger problem is that you have trouble choosing what you want. And so I want to give you some tips and stuff for you to be able to walk away with and understand how you can keep choosing what you truly want in the face of what other people might want. So I'm going to start by telling a story. It's going to be story time with Genea. So many years ago, I was a bartender, and I was always a little bit weird in the bartending world. For people who had been in the service industry and bartending world for a very long time, I wasn't as jaded as a lot of them were. Part of that was because I was always working on something that I loved, kind of. I was I had it on the table to work on. I had a photography business and I made art, and I kind of worked on it. I didn't really work on it wholeheartedly because something would always come up, right? I'd have to work, I'd have to do something for somebody else. And so the things that I wanted always got put on the back burner. But because I had that thing that I really wanted and I was working towards it, albeit very, very slowly, I maintained a positive attitude when I was behind the bar. And I enjoyed it for many of those years. Not all of those years, but many of those years. And one of the things that I would do every year is I would take the month of January off from drinking. And I would do this. I told myself it was because I needed to make sure that it was still easy to not drink, because this is how I would guarantee to myself that I didn't have a drinking problem. If it's still easy to not drink for a month, well, then I must not have a drinking problem. That was the story I told myself. And it was always really easy for me to not drink for a month. But there's some other layers to it. You know, I think that my body didn't really want the alcohol as part of it. And so not drinking for a month was great. It felt good. I felt better. Across the board, I felt better. I had more motivation. I felt good. And I think probably every single one of you out here watching or listening wants to feel good. And maybe you do feel good all of the time, and I congratulate you. It's a wonderful place to be. I am there a majority of the time these days. But back in those days, I didn't feel good all of the time, and not drinking for a month made me feel good. In fact, I would even go so far as to say, at a soul level, it is what my body wanted. But it was not easy for me to not drink, generally speaking. When I was behind the bar, people always wanted to do shots with me. People always wanted to drink with me. On my days off, I rarely drank at all. But on the days that I went to work, I typically drank quite a bit. Maybe not as much as some other bartenders, but I definitely drank a lot. There was this running joke that we used to say, like, oh, I felt like I didn't even drink last night. I only had 5 shots. And that was kind of the bartending world that I lived in. And so normally, if I didn't want to drink, if I go into work thinking, I'm not going to drink today because that's what I wanted, I would go in and some customer would be like, hey, do a shot with me. And I would say, no, I'm not drinking today. And they'd be like, come on, Genea, it's just one day. Have a drink with me. I'd be like, no, I'm not drinking today. Come on, Genea. And then later they'd order another shot. Come on, Genea, just have a drink with me. And over the course of the day, the shift, I would give in more than once. I could never not drink for a day. I could never not drink for a week. People would always badger me. Come on, Genea, just have a drink with me. Just whatever. You can not drink tomorrow. And so I would always give in. And I would always give in because their experience, I always put their experience ahead of mine. It's no wonder I was in the hospitality industry. I have been doing this shit since I was 2 years old. 2 years old is the earliest time I can remember it, but I might have even started doing it younger. So since I was 2 years old, I was putting other people's experience ahead of mine. And part of that was trying to please my mom and trying to make sure I was safe and she didn't yell at me, she didn't beat me, she didn't do any of the things that were not great that I didn't want to happen. So that habit became a part of who I was. That everything that I did was filtered through the lens of how will it affect them? How are they going to feel about it? Because I had made it at 2 years old, I had made it my responsibility for how my mom felt. I decided at 2, 3, 4, 5 years old that my mom's experience was the most important thing, that she must feel good. And now I did this, we could say, out of love. Perhaps that was part of it. But really, I did it because if she was in a neutral, positive state, then I could feel calm and at peace and at ease. I would feel safe. And so everything in my life when I was young, when I was around my mom, became about making sure her experience was good. Because if her experience was good, then I wouldn't have to feel the terrible emotions that came from her actions and her way of being when she didn't feel good. And so bartending, when people would say, come on, Genea, just have a shot, I would say no, but underneath, I was worried about how they would take it. I was worried about how they would feel about it. And because I was worried about it, I had a little bit of give. That no was not solid. It was not clean. It was laced with fear. So pretty much all of my no's in my life were laced with fear. And I learned over the years that when I took a month off from drinking, people respected my no. People respected my no, I thought, because it was about the month off of drinking. But the truth is that I was so fucking solid with my no that there wasn't that room for something different. There wasn't that room for them to push because I had made this clear decision and nothing was going to stop me from not drinking for a month. And because I had made that clear decision, people respected my no. There was no wiggle room about where I was going to be worried about what they felt. And I always said to myself, like, man, they only respect it when I take a month off. Why is that? In later years, I worked at a bar that didn't have as big of a drinking culture. But what would happen towards the end of my shift when I would have all my regulars and all the people that I really liked around is I would pour myself a drink. Not because I wanted one. I mean, I can see this now. At the time, I thought I wanted one, but I can see that belief that people really wanted to drink with me and they would feel better if I was drinking with them. So I would pour myself a drink and I would feel like they were more at ease, that they were happier if I was drinking with them. And now that was some bullshit story in my head. They didn't care. But because of those past experiences, I had formed this belief that my regular customers, the customers who really liked me and who I really liked, that they wanted to drink with me. And so, even though this particular situation at this particular bar, these customers didn't care, I was still operating under the assumption that they preferred to drink with me. And because I operated from that assumption, I would drink. And so, one of the things about doing what you think other people want is a lot of those things that we perceive that will make people happy are not about the present moment. They are about a past moment. And so if you think about saying no, why is it that it's hard to say no? For me, it was hard because if I was a kid and I said no, I would get in trouble. There were consequences. And so, again, I was always putting my mom's experience ahead of my own, in front of my own. And so here I was at the bar. I couldn't say a clean no to those people that really wanted to have a shot with me because of the way things were in the past. And then later years at the bar that didn't have that big drinking culture, I still was doing the fucking things that I thought would make them happy, but it wasn't based on the present moment. It was based on the past. One of the things that I've realized is that I would do these structural things that would give me a structure in which I could say no. I would do these things like not drink for a month. And that structure would be so definitive that I could say no. I could say no to the people who wanted to drink with me. And so another thing, another structure that I had in place so that I could do the thing that I wanted was that I was workaholic. I would work. I would never take time off work, especially not on the weekends, because that's where all the money was. It's the story I told myself. But the truth is that people would ask me to do things. They would say, hey, Genea, come to this party. And I wouldn't want to go. But I couldn't say no, because if I said no, their experience might not be good. And if their experience might not be good, my nervous system, my subconscious mind was concerned about the consequences. Right? Now, these consequences, of course, in the nervous system were the perception that it would be the same consequences as when I was growing up. And those consequences, of course, were not really good. But if I said no to going to somebody's party, chances are they're not going to haul off and start yelling at me or spank me or hit me, chances are they're going to be like, okay. If I could say the no cleanly, if I could say the no where it wasn't laced with fear. So, but I couldn't do that. My no's were laced with fear. And so instead of saying no, what I always said was, I have to work. I have to work. I'm sorry, I can't go. I have to work. And fuck, I'll tell you, when somebody that I didn't want to go to their party or do whatever they wanted me to do, if it was on one of my days off, I would be like, I would squirm. I'd just be like, oh shit, how do I say no when I don't have this structure that allows me to say no in a definitive way without fear? So I would say no. And guess what they would do? Come on, Genea. Just come to the party. Just come to the whatever. Just, you can do it. Like, what have you got to lose? Just come. Oh, okay. All right, fine, I'll go. And then I would feel like this resentment, bound by obligation. And I'm sure if you've ever said no, said yes to something that you didn't want to do, it felt like an obligation. It didn't feel good. It felt like crap, actually. And maybe you went and did the thing and maybe you had a good time. And that often happened to me. But I couldn't say no without having an excuse. Like, oh, come visit me for the holidays. No, I have to work. That was my big one. And I can see looking back that, yes, working a lot was about the money for me, for sure. That provided me a sense of safety, but it also gave me an out. It gave me structure to say no definitively. And see, people didn't ever argue when I said I had to work, just like people never argued with me when I said I'm taking a month off of drinking, because I could say it definitively. But the challenge is, how do you say no definitively without the structure? Because maybe I want to drink sometimes. I should be able to do that. I shouldn't have to have this structure to be able to say no or say yes. And what if I want to go to a party? Like, there were so many events that I actually did want to go to, concerts, weddings, but that structure that I have to work was in place. So I said no to the things that I wanted to say yes to, because that structure not only gave me the room to say no, it also meant that I always had to say no. And so as you think about your life, think about the things that you have said no to that you really wanted to go to. And what was your excuse? What was your reason? And then think about the things that you have said no to, that you actually wanted to say no to. And did you use the same reasons? Because if you're doing that, you're robbing yourself of the experience of being able to choose what you want in any given moment. And I know that's what I did for myself. I always had to work, so therefore I could never say yes to the things that I wanted to do. Because if I took time off and said yes to the things that I wanted to do, but I took time off, then that would crumble the structure in which I was allowed to say no. And so for me, I couldn't do that. I could only say no. I couldn't say yes. because to say yes would mean I would have to dismantle the structure. And then I wouldn't be able to say no anymore. So, how do we start to say no in a way that's clean and definitive, but based on the current situation? It means we have to admit to ourselves that, yes, I want to do this thing, or no, I don't want to do this thing. Because if you have that structure set up, you've kind of set it in stone. You've made the decision that this is the way it is, right? I'm not drinking for a month. This is the way it is. And it wouldn't matter if I actually wanted to have a drink. This is the way it is, so I have to stick to it. So that's the decision. And the other decision for me was working, right? I have to work on the weekends. I can't take time off to do anything, quote, fun. So that's the way it is. Great when it's an event that I don't want to go to. Horrible when it's an event that I do want to go to. So, how can I, you, any of us who struggle from this problem, how do we choose what we want at any given moment and be okay with it? Well, first of all, you have to, in order to do that, you have to let go of putting other people's experience ahead of your own. And now, if you, like me, started doing that when you were 2 years old, that's not going to be the easiest thing to do. In fact, it's so baked into your nervous system that not doing that would probably stir up some anxiety. I know for me, it stirred up anxiety, and I didn't get to choose the things that I wanted. In fact, I didn't even know really what I wanted and what I didn't. When somebody would ask me to go to a party, I would say no so automatically that I wouldn't even really take the assessment and really get clear, like, wait, do I want to do this? So that's one, you have to get clear on what it is that you actually want. And if you've been putting other people's experience ahead of your own for your whole life, you might not be able to discern what you actually want. I know for me, I couldn't. And I did pepper in some things that I wanted throughout my life, but it only usually happened when I had made sure that everybody else was taken care of first. I could go into stories about a big the big photography project I did where I traveled the country and funded it through Kickstarter, and there's layers of that stuff in there. I published the book from that project because I put everybody else's experience first. And it was what I really wanted, but I created this structure where it made me do it, because otherwise I would have had to have put other people's experience ahead. But because people had backed me, I was able to actually get that thing that I wanted done, but I had to bake it in the fucking structure. Now, if you're starting to see that maybe perhaps you've struggled with this problem too, that you had to set yourself up with a structure to be able to do the things that you wanted, but in that there was limitations, because only within the structure can you do it. But you limited yourself to not being able to change your mind in the midst of it if that's what you really wanted. How do you get out of this pattern? I mean, there's, ways you can work with people and all of that to break the pattern. And I'm one of those peoples you can work with. But how do we do it? Maybe if we're not going to work with somebody, what's one step that we can take towards creating something different in our life? You have to start doing things that you want, that you love, that feel good. And you have to do them in the face of other people maybe not liking it, or those old stories about how other people might not like it. So, for instance, that story I was talking about, how I was working in the bar where the culture wasn't really that shot culture, drinking with the bartender kind of thing, but I still would do the habit of drinking with people because of that old thing. So, a lot of times in our lives, we will be in situations where that old thing will come up, that old circumstance, and we have to hold to what it is that we want, because our mind is going to want to do the old thing. And so, one of the ways that you can do this is that you can practice by having some peace, love, and joy practices. If you have a joy practice, maybe you love to dance. So maybe every day you listen to a song and you dance. One of my joy practices is jumping on the trampoline, listening to music and jumping on the trampoline, and it brings me so much fucking joy. So, how do I maintain that practice even if I'm running late to meet up with somebody? Right? That's a very strong circumstance where typically in the past, I'm going to put their experience ahead of mine. I'm going to not do my joy practice. So, what do you do? So, I just text them and say, I'm going to be 15 minutes late. And I do my joy practice, because that is a practice of putting me first. When I have a lot of stuff on my calendar, how do I continue to do my joy practice, my peace practice, my love practices, the things that make me feel good every day that I've baked into my structure? If I have so much stuff on my calendar that maybe there's not enough time, how can I potentially move something around and put my experience first? So these are small ways you can practice putting your experience first. And you might feel some anxiety, some nervousness as you do these small things, but that gives you an opportunity to process and clear the emotions from the past, which will then allow you to continue to put your experience first. And now, sometimes I'm doing something that I really, really love and it takes up the whole day. Maybe I'm at a firewalk event or something like that. And maybe I don't do the jumping on the trampoline, but I have replaced it with something else that I totally want, that makes me feel joy, that makes me feel expansive, that is something that I truly desire. I haven't replaced it with something that was for somebody else. And so that's the key, is that you have that structure of those practices that make you feel good, that make you feel joyful, and you hold to them in the face of somebody else having an experience that might not be as optimum as if you had bent yourself over for them. But if you aren't going to be able to do your joy practice, it's because you've filled that space with something that's very much for you, very joyful for you. So you haven't actually squashed the sense of your joy at all. You haven't bent your experience for somebody else's experience. And so this is a small way that you can practice. The more you practice, especially the more you practice it and you do it and you feel a little bit of anxiety, and just breathe through it. Just breathe. Keep breathing. Eventually it'll feel okay. Keep doing it. Eventually it'll feel okay. And little by little, you will start to expand your ability to choose yourself in the face of what somebody else may or may not want. And that may or may not want could be what's true right now, could also be just a hallucination of what was true in the past. And so subconsciously, you're feeling like it's the same right now. If you want to go deeper and work on some stuff that will really unwind that patterning much faster, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to me on social media at Genea Barnes, which is all my social media handles on LinkedIn, on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram. And my name is spelled Genea. So it's a G, not a J. Genea. Barnes. Open up your browsers if you want to know about a Firewalk event or any of the other ways that I might be able to help you to break that pattern so that you can start choosing more and more of what you want every day and feel good. Do the things that make you feel good all of the time. If that's something you want and you want help with it, reach out to me. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to this episode of Be the Wolf. And remember, when you operate from the truth of who you are, humanity evolves. We'll see you next time on Be the Wolf. Bye.